Well, we are officially under 1 week away from crowning the 2025 College Football National Championship, and it couldn't be a choice between two better teams. The Ohio State Buckeyes taking on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and one of the main storylines come next Monday is going to be the play of the quarterbacks. They've been great all year, and they share one thing in common. Where they're at today isn't where they started their college career. We dive into it tonight on the Buckeye Breakdown Podcast.
We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown.
And welcome in, everybody, to the Buckeye Breakdown Podcast. Anthony Moeglin here with you tonight as we finally turn the page to the National Championship Week. Everything that's happened in the 2024-2025 college football season comes down to this Monday night down in Atlanta, Georgia, where two of the biggest brands in all of college football, two of the most storied college football programs are going to be facing off against each other in the, I guess it's not the Georgia Dome anymore, down in the Superdome in Atlanta. And it's going to be a game that has a ton of storylines. And obviously, Ohio State's going to come into this ball game as heavy favorites, and they should be. This Ohio State team has taken their lumps on the year, has seen their ups, has seen their downs, and they're as high as they could possibly be right now after three of the most impressive wins for this program, especially on a season where things looked pretty nervy for a while. They obviously dropped that game to Michigan, and everyone's questioning pretty much everything. Should Ryan Day have a job at the end of this season? Is Chip Kelly a good play caller? What is Will Howard doing on the offensive side of the football? And to the Buckeyes' credit, they buckled down. They looked in the mirror. They looked at each other. And they've solved their issues and have solved it in a pretty convincing way. The last three games for Ohio State, Tennessee, total blowout. That game over in the first quarter. They head out west to Pasadena. And as I sit here, thoughts and prayers to those who have family members who are personally involved with all the things that are going on in Southern California. It's as sad as it could get. And you just hope and pray that everyone out there can get back on their feet. And survive what's been a horrible situation out there. But before all that took place, Ohio State in the Rose Bowl went and just dominated Oregon, was up 34-0 at one point in the game. And then last week in the semifinal matchup against the Texas Longhorns down in the Cotton Bowl, the Ohio State Buckeyes were tested. They were challenged by Texas, and Texas had a 1st and goal at the 1-yard line with about 4 minutes left to go in the game. The opportunity to tie the football game up, and a goal-to-go stop that will live in Ohio State football lore for forever was made as the Buckeyes pretty much used everybody. Caleb Downs made an incredible play. Jack Sawyer made 2 incredible plays. Their secondary was good. And then Jack Sawyer made the strip sack that literally will be played on loop for the rest of time in Ohio State world, and they punched their ticket to the national championship game, the place where Ohio State should be. It's where they have aspired to be. It was one of their goals to start the year, and frankly, it's where they deserve to be. They had an opportunity to go one of two ways. They were in the fork in the road. They had a fork in the road after that Michigan game, and they chose the path less traveled, and they buckled down and totally flipped their season around and have the opportunity to put a cherry on the top of it. And now their opponent that's coming into town, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and they're on an equally impressive run right now, 13 straight wins after just an unbelievable loss early on in the season to Northern Illinois, where the Huskies came into South Bend and took down the Fighting Irish in a game where it was like, oh gosh, same old Irish. It really felt that way as Notre Dame tried to work their way out of it. But a lot of the stuff that had been hindering them in years past, reared its ugly head. It was a game where they couldn't complete a pass. They struggled to run the football. They couldn't make the timely stops they needed to on defense. And you're like, yeah, we've seen this story before with the Fighting Irish. And you thought it was going to be a year where they bowed out early. But similar to how Ohio State buckled down, the Irish buckled down as well. And they just ripped off one win after another. They found their identity on offense, similar to how Ohio State's found theirs. Notre Dame has certainly found theirs, where they are a run-first team. They're going to run the quarterback. They're going to make it really hard. They're going to play great defense. They're going to try to strangle you out. They'll play good special teams, and then their offense will do enough at the end of the football game to get it done. Their playoff run got everything started. They had the Friday night game that started the entire college football playoff, where everyone was just so darn excited for the 12-team playoff to get started, and it was like the perfect matchup to start it. It was Notre Dame versus Indiana. It felt like a high school football game, where it was two crosstown rivals getting together in the biggest game of the state. As it was two Indiana teams who took each other on. And Notre Dame was able to overcome a lot of the Indiana hype and get a nice victory over the Hoosiers. And then the big one was up next. They had the Georgia Bulldogs on their schedule in a week, in a game where it was really odd. Again, another tragedy took place down in New Orleans with the terrorist attack that pushed the game back a full day. And Notre Dame got to face a Georgia team that was a little beat up. They were on their second-string quarterback, and the Irish made no doubts about it. They took care of business in a handily fashion and got rid of Georgia to set up a matchup down in Miami against the Penn State Nittany Lions in a game where it was two teams that were so evenly matched. And it ended up being, outside of the Ohio State-Texas game, it ended up being the second best game of the entire college football playoff. And for Notre Dame, they did what they had to do. They won the turnover battle, and they won it late, and they won it with about 40 seconds to go. When the game was back and forth, Notre Dame got down real big. They got down 10-0 at halftime, and then they just chipped away. They got a field goal, right before half. Then they went down and scored to tie it, and then they scored again, and they just kept their foot on the gas. And with just under a minute to go, there was a tie football game, and Penn State had the ball, and Drew Aller made a really questionable decision, turning and throwing the ball back across the field. It was intercepted. The Irish ran 3 plays, kicked a field goal to punch their ticket to Atlanta to take on those the vaunted Buckeyes. So the storylines abound. These are obviously two of the biggest programs of all time, and it even goes back to the home and home that they've had the past 2 years, where Notre Dame came into Columbus 2 years ago and came up just a little bit short, and then last year up in South Bend, Kyle McCord led a huge game-winning touchdown drive where Notre Dame had 10 players on the field on the final play, and the Buckeyes punched it in for a game-winning touchdown as time expired, and it all leads to this. I guess it isn't a rubber match because Ohio State's up 2-0 in this series, but this one is obviously the most important. And on paper, like I said earlier, the leans all Buckeyes. This game feels like Ohio State could absolutely rout these Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Now, one place where I think that Ohio State fans will be, surprised a bit is that Notre Dame's defense is real. Notre Dame has a really good front, very similar to what Texas has, and on the back end, they trust their guys to play a lot of man coverage, which I can't imagine that they'll try to do against Ohio State. But they've done it all year long. They've challenged themselves, and they've been really good. They certainly haven't faced the caliber of offense that Ohio State's going to bring to the table. And I think outside of Texas, Ohio State hasn't faced the caliber of defense that Notre Dame's going to bring to the table. So we'll dive into all of that later in the week. But tonight, we're going to talk about the quarterback position. It's obviously my favorite position. It's my favorite topic to cover. And this one's got just an incredible storyline. 2 transfer quarterbacks who, frankly, have landed in great spots for them individually, but there's a real world where these scenarios flip-flopped, and Riley Leonard's the quarterback of Ohio State, and Will Howard's the quarterback of Notre Dame. There was rumblings all of last offseason where each guy was linked to both programs, and I think that they settled both in the right places. Now, they played two totally different football games. I think that Will Howard has shown his ability to become a big player for Ohio State, but it's took some time. And it's funny, these two guys are about mirror images of each other. They both stand at 6'4". They both weigh in just north of 215 pounds. Riley Leonard's 216. And I think Will Howard's a little bit bigger. He comes in at 235. So very similar body builds, but these are two guys who have really taken advantage of their opportunity. We'll start with their guy, Riley Leonard. Now, this isn't his best season ever. His sophomore year at Duke was Riley's best season. He threw for 2,967 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions, all while rushing for 700 yards and 13 touchdowns. So that sophomore season for Riley Leonard was his best year by a long shot. It was one where he kind of jumped onto the scene. It was like, hey, maybe this Duke team could try to go get something. Maybe they are something. Maybe they have something in this young quarterback. And his junior year, not his best, but it was cut short in the game against Notre Dame, where he had the Duke Blue Devils going down to win a football game against the Irish, and he ends up breaking his ankle and really busting his leg up pretty badly. And then instead of coming back for his senior year, his head coach left. Mike Elko went to Texas A&M, and he decided to go into the transfer portal. And like I said, linked to both Ohio State and Notre Dame, ends up falling into the lap of the Irish. And on the year, he's been, I would say, solid. I wouldn't say he's been great. I'd say he's been pretty solid. He has 2,606 yards passing for 19 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. He's completing a career high, 66% of his passes, so pretty solid there. And then on the ground, it's been his best output running the football. 866 yards and 16 scores, 16 touchdowns. It's pretty insane. When you break it all down. And this has been part of Notre Dame's, I guess, maturation, but Notre Dame's evolution as an offense, where they really leaned into Riley Leonard being an extension of the run game, and they do it shamelessly. They will run the quarterback a ton. And he fits in really well with a great running back room. And again, we'll get into that room later in the week. But Riley Leonard does a really nice job. He's found a really good niche at his second school after he transferred from Duke. He's got Notre Dame on the cusp of being a national champion and really cementing his legacy in South Bend for the rest of the time. A guy who's began to cement his legacy and is one step away from becoming an all-time Ohio State legend is Will Howard. Now, Will Howard, while Riley Leonard, I said, it was having a solid year, Will Howard's been spectacular. This is by far and away his best season in college, and he's a fifth-year guy. So he spent four full years, say that 5 times fast, at Kansas State, where he played a good majority of his entire tenure there. He played as a freshman. He played as a sophomore. He was a starter there his junior year, and he was the guy his senior year. And he hasn't even scratched he never even got close to the year that he's having for Ohio State. His best year came last year in his senior season at Kansas State, where he had 2,634 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. And then on the ground, he had 351 yards rushing for 9 scores. And you see clips all the time of the player that he was at Kansas State. And while he was solid, not even close to the guy he is now. This year's been off the charts for Will Howard. He's completing almost 73% of his passes. 72.6% of his passes are going for a completion. He's got 3,779 yards in 33 touchdowns. Those are unbelievable numbers throwing the football. And then on the ground, 89 carries for 169 yards and 7 scores. So not his best year carrying the football, but doesn't need it because he's throwing the heck out of the rock. And yes, it certainly helps that he's got the best receiving core in the country, but the growth that he's shown over the past month has been amazing. And it's really evident, in my opinion, when he's throwing the ball deep. You think about that Tennessee game, you think about the Oregon games for sure, where he really stretched the field vertically. And it has been a point of emphasis of his throughout the season to continue to get better at that specific portion of his game. And he's really done that, and he's done it in flying colors, and it's been awesome to see. And he's got his Buckeyes on the verge of becoming national champions, a title they haven't had in some time, and he's got them there. And he had a great quote somewhere along the week. I saw it somewhere in the social media world where he had said something like, "Man, I just wish I had more time to be an Ohio State Buckeye." And it was pretty cool. I think back to the Akron game where he came out a little shaky, and in the post-game press conference, he had mentioned, he's like, yeah, I was looking around the stadium. I was looking at my jersey and looking at my helmet and being like, holy cow, this is cool to be an Ohio State Buckeye. And now he's 60 minutes away from making him one of the best Ohio State Buckeyes, certainly one of the best quarterbacks in Ohio State history to ever strap it up and put on the scarlet and gray. So that quarterback storyline is one of 100 that we could dive into, but it was obviously my favorite one to kick off our national championship week. And we'll be with you all week long. We have live show coming tomorrow where we break down the Ohio State offense versus that stingy Notre Dame defense. And then on Thursday, we'll be back in action with the flip side, a defensive preview where we look at Ohio State's defense versus the Notre Dame offense, an area where I think Ohio State can absolutely dominate the football game. If it gets wayward for any way, it's going to be because Ohio State's defense fell asleep at the hotel and didn't get on the bus, because they have a huge advantage over the Notre Dame offense. So a bunch of storylines to get into tomorrow and Thursday. Then Friday, try to put something quick out. I'm going to be traveling down to Atlanta on Friday, and then it is all systems go. It is pedal to the metal. There's going to be content galore coming from our YouTube channel with press conferences, with shots of the hotel, with all sorts of different media stuff that'll be coming from the game. So we'll have the YouTube page loaded up. So if you're watching there, hit subscribe. If you're not, if you're viewing this on Twitter, head over to Ohio State Buckeyes on SI on YouTube, where we will be filling that thing up with content. If you're following on YouTube and you're not following on Twitter, head over to our Twitter page. Get over there. I'll be live tweeting all weekend long and trying to bring everybody in to the experience, because I know not everybody can get down to Atlanta. So I want to bring as much of it as I can right to your front door, right to your computer screen. So wherever you like to get your Buckeye content, we appreciate it and really appreciate you making us a stop on your content journey. So subscribe there, follow on Twitter, head over to our website, si.com. It's hit me right here. I love it when it works out just like that, si.com/college/Ohio State. Our team's working hard all week long to get you set for the College Football Playoff National Championship taking place down in Atlanta, Georgia on Monday night. The Ohio State Buckeyes, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight on the Ohio State Buckeyes on SI YouTube channel.